Proverbial boy Jeffy here in Schleswig-Holstein, Germany. And today I got a question for you. What do a cheetah and some trees have to do with charisma? Well, today we're diving into Michael Gelb's book, Body Learning, to explore the Alexander technique and see how it can benefit your social skills. The Alexander technique, it's a very unique approach to communication, performance, and just learning in general that was developed by the actor F. Matthias Alexander back in the late 1800s. So to walk you through the basics of this technique, I'm going to tell you a little story about a young man named Benjamin Cash. Now Ben, he's 22 years old, he's got a lot of potential, but he's sort of stuck in a rut due to crippling social anxiety. He's got fear of judgment, he's got self-doubt. These are obviously massive obstacles to anyone who's trying to change themselves and get better socially, but everything transforms when he stumbles across a book called Body Learning. As he reads it, he discovers the power of the 7 main principles involved in Alexander technique, and this ultimately kickstarts his journey to making a complete 180 in terms of his social results. The first principle of Alexander technique is called use and functioning, and this makes young Ben realize that he can actually take charge of his own actions and his own decisions. He starts questioning his old habits, he starts opening up to fresh possibilities. F. Matthias Alexander himself said, "Reason pure of all influence from prior habit is fiction. The real opposition is not between reason and habit, but between routine, unintelligent habit and intelligent habit or performance." So what is the key function of your intellect? It's to monitor the effectiveness of your habits and look at them and say, should I make any changes? Realize that what you think of as your natural uses of energy are in fact all deeply affected by these conditionings and habits that we've been practicing unconsciously our entire lives. So once you understand that, that's the first step in actually making changes and starting to do what you want instead of just being this like mindless victim of your history. With the second principle, the whole person, Ben understands that real change happens when we see our mind, our body, our emotions, our intuition, all as one. And this brings him a sense of wholeness and authenticity that he maybe had never experienced before. Alexander emphasized, and I always emphasize this myself, the human organism, human beings, we always function as a whole. And you can only be fundamentally changed as a whole. A lot of people, they think of themselves as this unconnected mass of different systems. And that is true to an extent. You know, there's different modes. You've got your face, you've got your body, you've got your emotions, you've got your intellect, you've got your intuition, you've got the higher observer. All of these kind of so-called modes want to assert what they believe is best for the well-being of the overall organism. And there's kind of this like imperfect tendency towards unification. But again, the point of a lot of the training that I do, in fact, the point of a lot of therapy for that matter, is attaining wholeness or attaining internal congruence. Those parts of yourself, it's like, yes, ultimately they do form a gestalt of whole communication. Those parts do exist, but when those parts are in disagreement or they're incongruent with each other, very often the person doesn't even know what they want. Again, congruence is a healthy state of being, and it's a major aim of therapy. By looking at your whole instrument and starting to make changes with that view in mind, that's the next step. The third principle, the primary control, shows young Ben the power of a well-aligned head-neck-torso relationship. And this enhances his ease of movement and even how he interacts with other people. Alexander, ultimately through his studies, he came to realize that the point of connection between the head and the spine, again, where the head rests on the C1 vertebrae, he called this the primary control, and he realized that this is the point of greatest leverage for organizing the system into a coordinated whole of how you stand, how you move, how you express yourself. All your power comes from that. And a lot of times, though, this primary control, that alignment has become unbalanced by what he referred to as the startle pattern, a response that's typically elicited by like a sudden noise or a surprise or somebody jumping out from around a corner. and the characteristic response that we all have to that, it starts with a disturbance of the head-neck-torso relationship, right? Like kind of like this, followed by a raising of the shoulders, usually a tensing up of the chest and knees, getting ready to flee, right? So it's again, this is the startle patterns like, right? And all of this results in a loss in the tone of the what you might call the anti-gravity system of your body. Consider our entire lives take place within a gravitational field that's continually pulling us down. The Alexander technique, it encourages a natural, effortless sense of up. Look at a cheetah. Look at how trees grow out of the ground. Note how they seem very free from tension. They're balanced. They're simply ready, remaining upright with almost no effort, in perfect biomechanical harmony with the environment. The majority of people, they spend much of their time in a modified form of that startle pattern. And sadly, in many older people, this pattern has kind of become a fixed way of being, where you just see them walking around like this all the time. People who work in front of computers all day, you might start off like in good posture, but over time, you know, if I'm editing, like I notice this tendency in myself, I'm editing for like 15 hours, I might slowly go like this. You know, kids wearing heavy backpacks, people looking at their phones, it all contributes to creating this permanent startle pattern that totally screws with your primary control alignment and ultimately interferes with your ability to have that effortless sense of movement. Again, I know from my own experience, when you balance that primary control, your movement becomes lighter, it becomes easier. The way you walk, the way you talk, the way you engage, you have a better sense of where you are and sometimes even of who you are. Now, coming to the fourth principle of unreliable sensory appreciation, as Ben reads through this book, he starts challenging his own perceptions, right? He takes a step back. He observes and understands his body's responses. He frees himself from the limitations of his old belief systems. Alexander found that habitual misuse, what he called misuse, again, improper use of the self, negatively affected the reliability of the sense of what he was doing with his own body. He couldn't be, in other words, he couldn't be sure that what he was doing was what he thought he was doing. And this led to him coining this term debauched kinesthesia. And this means a corrupted and therefore untrustworthy sense of your position, of your tension, and your movement. So a big part of the work that I do, both in my mentoring and on the live infield programs, is getting people to develop an awareness of the gap between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing and what other people are perceiving. You know, a lot of times people, they go up and they think they're this super free, super great body language, they're smiling, they're super chill and at ease, but in fact, they look extremely tense. They've got like this rictus grin of terror on their face, or just like this ineffectual robot face. They look like a murderer. And I'm like, yo, you're not smiling, you look like a murderer. They're like, really? Really? Very often they're shocked to hear this. Basically, reports that all is well are received by the brain when in fact all is very wrong. A person can feel at ease, for example, when they're slouched in front of the TV in some contorted position. They feel relaxed, but they're in fact grossly abusing their body. So you have to cultivate an objective and detached awareness, and that's going to enable you to apply sort of more scientific or experimental method in studying your own behavior. And of course, this is where a coach can help to give you a more objective feedback as to what's actually going on. And a lot of the what I used to call criticism that I give on a program or in the mentoring, I now say objective descriptions of what I see. Like, I notice you're making a choice to do this, you might want to do this instead. They're like, really, I'm doing that? And that can often be enough for them to realize that gap and then again start to close the gap. The fifth principle, inhibition, again, as Ben reads through this magical book, gives him a way to escape from automatic responses. He starts to take time to reflect. He starts consciously choosing his actions, and this helps him to respond genuinely and authentically in social interactions. Alexander said that for the right thing to happen, one has first to stop doing the wrong thing. Success or failure depends on your ability to interpose a delay between stimulus and response. In other words, don't just immediately react in these old conditioned ways. You got to be like, okay, here's my impulse of what to do. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to do what I know I'm supposed to do. This stopping off process, it doesn't involve freezing in place or suppressing spontaneity. Rather, it's a matter of consciously refusing to respond in these conditioned, stereotyped ways so that true spontaneity can actually manifest itself. Before the brain is an instrument for action, it has to be an instrument for preparation. Now, the sixth principle, direction, then teaches young Benjamin Cash to consciously channel his thoughts and intentions using a mix of things like positive affirmations, purposeful self-talk. Focused attention can lead to increased confidence. It can lead to better self-expression. Inhibition sets the stage for direction. Okay, again, that stopping off process then sets the stage for a direct conscious behavior as opposed to just defaulting to these old unconscious behaviors. When these old habits are made conscious and that delay is put between the stimulus and the response, now something new can happen. Of course, this requires you to pay attention. And attention, it's very different from what's usually called concentration. Attention in the Alexandrian sense involves a balanced awareness of yourself, a balanced awareness of your surroundings, with this sort of like very easy emphasis on whatever is particularly relevant in the moment. After you inhibit those knee-jerk responses, you project conscious direction now. So for example, you might think to yourself, okay, I'm stressed in this situation. Okay, free your neck so you can let the head go forward and up so the back can lengthen and widen, release tension consciously. Again, that's just one simple example of direction. But again, you got to first recognize and then inhibit the old conditioned patterns. Finally, the seventh principle, ends and means, helps young Benjamin understand it's not always about the outcome, but the journey. Now that's a cliche we've all heard time and time again, but ultimately it's a very valid one. There's a reason you hear it time and time again, because it's valid. This perspective, it brings a new sense of freedom, a new sense of joy of taking action to social interactions. Alexander found that most of us let our immediate goals dominate the field of our attention. Again, am I getting the result? Am I getting the result? He called this end gaining. To define that term, end gaining is sort of grasping for results without paying thoughtful attention to process. I see this a lot in my trainings. People are just going out, they're like, am I getting the result? Am I getting the result? Am I getting the result? And they're just not executing what they're supposed to be doing. I had a student this past weekend, he'd been on the program for 3 days, it's the third day, and he goes up to some people and he says some really dumb shit. He's like, can I get your Instagram? I'm like, what? He's like, well, I didn't know what to do. I'm like, bro, have you not been here the past 3 days? Just do what I told you to do. Pay attention to the process. Stop worrying so much about the result. Alexander emphasized the process of attaining the goal rather than this narrow focus on the goal itself. Quality, the result, is a function of quality, the process. In my personal experience, Alexander technique and Alexander's work as a whole, it offers a very profound, process-oriented approach to improving the quality of not just your life, but your performance in any arena, right? The Alexander technique, it can play a very, very significant role in helping you reshape your social experiences, and ultimately it can lead to revealing the best version of yourself. So if you're serious about improving your charisma, your social skills, there's a whole lot more to explore. Check out that book that I'm talking about here. If you want to dive even deeper, I've taken my 20 years of coaching experience and I created a charisma mentoring program that covers literally all of the bases. I've designed this program to be a literal game changer. So check out the link in the description below. If you want to learn more about this, you want to apply, the classes are very small and intimate. You get tons of personal coaching from myself. Again, description, check it out. Hope to see you there. It'd be my honor and privilege. This has been Jeffy, and I'll see you next time.
The course has been life-changing. Life-changing is the word. I feel like communicating is the key to life, right? With this kind of stuff, you can become a master. You can become a top echelon speaker, communicator. One of the awesomest experiences of my life. And I've been rebuilding this awesome, cool new relationship with my family. And I am very thankful for this program.